Okay, so this is the first of our little sessions on ways to pray. And I wanted to think today especially about lamenting, or basically kind of complaining to God, and how we might go about that. I'm sure there are lots of things. I mean, particularly, it's not difficult at all at the moment, is it, with the situation as it is in the world and in Ukraine, to think about things that we want to be asking God, why is this happening? There might be lots of things that come to mind, both on a big worldwide scale, but also on a personal level, where we want to be saying, Lord, why is this happening? And we don't understand why the world is as it is. We don't understand why we have to go through certain things in our own lives, why other people seem to have to go through such difficult times. We have personal struggles and lots of other things going on. And often, I think, as Christians, we don't really know what to do with those sorts of struggles. We don't really know what to do with those sorts of questions and with those difficult periods in our lives or things going on in the world. And there's a sense in which I think we can feel that, we know that God is the ruler of the universe, and he's the creator of all things. And so there's a sense in which we feel, well, in that case, I can't really question him, can I? I can't really go complaining to God when he's the one who is the sovereign one over everything, because he must know what he's doing. So why would I, a little human being like me, go and complain to God? It seems like it's something that is above our station. We shouldn't really be able to do that. And we often feel that we shouldn't question God, and I think we can easily get into situations where we can bury the hard things and the uncomfortable feelings that we have, rather than complaining or sharing them with God. And obviously, ultimately, it's true, as Christians, we do want to trust in a God who is the one who rules over all things. We want to be able to trust him as the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, and we're called to trust him. But when we read the Bible, we see so many examples of people who, in their relationship with God, and in I suppose growing in that relationship with him and in that trust of God, they do express their deepest feelings and emotions to God. And they're obviously liberated to do that. They feel that they can go to God and complain to God and express their anger to God, and in a sense, what we seem to see in the scriptures is that God wants to have a real relationship with us as his children and as his creatures. He doesn't want us to try to hide things from him. He doesn't want us to pretend that we feel a way that we don't really feel. He wants us to be honest with him. He wants us to develop that kind of real relationship with him. And really, if we're going to have that kind of honest relationship with God, then we will have to express to God those times when we feel that we need to complain and lament and show our anger or our doubt. That really we have to have the opportunity to question what God is doing if we're going to develop a real relationship with this God who wants to know us. And we see that so much in the Bible, don't we? If you think about the book of Job, where Job is going through such terrible suffering, he complains to God. He expresses his confusion. He questions God, and ultimately God speaks to him in his questioning. We think of the book of Lamentations, which is called Lamentations because it's a big lament about all the things that have gone wrong, about the destruction of God's holy city, Jerusalem. And it may be Jeremiah or someone who wrote Lamentations, but the point is, it's an expression of great sorrow and questioning and anger and distress with God. Why has this happened? And we see it in lots and lots of the Psalms as well, this pattern of lamenting, of complaining to God, and then of calling out to him. I just wanted to share one thing from Jeremiah. In chapter 15 of Jeremiah, we see this prophet calling out to God in a really distressed and honest way. So let me just share my screen for a moment and we'll follow along with Jeremiah 15. So here we are in Jeremiah, and he says in verse 10, "Alas, my mother, that you gave me birth, a man with whom the whole land strives and contends. I have neither lent nor borrowed, yet everyone curses me." So Jeremiah goes so far as to saying to God, I shouldn't have even been born. I wish I hadn't been born because my life is so terrible. And later on in this same kind of interchange with God and this same time of prayer, Jeremiah says a little bit further down in verse 18, "Why is my pain unending and my wound grievous and incurable? You are to me like a deceptive brook, like a spring that fails." And I wonder if you get there what Jeremiah is saying. He's essentially accusing God of being deceptive. He's saying, God, you've led me down a false path here. You've told me that I'm your servant, I'm your prophet, and now I'm in this place where there is no way of my thirst being quenched. You're a deceptive brook. You've deceived me into thinking there was going to be water to drink, and actually it's totally dry. So Jeremiah is being very honest with God, and he's speaking to God about his great distress at his situation. So that's one example. And when we look at the Psalms of lament, they often follow a particular pattern, and this is what we're going to think about really for the rest of the time. And we can use those Psalms as a pattern for ourselves in thinking about how can we express our complaints and our anger and our doubts to God. There are quite a few different Psalms of lament, and they generally follow a particular pattern, and I'll put it on the screen in a little bit, but the pattern is this. First of all, the psalmist turns to God. So in a sense, the person addresses God in some way. It might just be to say, "Oh Lord," but I suppose there's a sense in which the person who's written this psalm has moved from just wallowing in their distress and their anguish and looking inwards, and has turned outwards to look at God. So that's the first thing that happens. There's the acknowledgement that actually I've got to go to God with this. So there's a turning to God and an addressing God. And after the psalmist turns to God, then he moves into complaining to God, lamenting. So the next little section of the psalm tends to be setting forward the problem and what it is that's causing such grief and anguish or anger to the person who's writing the psalm. So there's turning to God, there's complaining to God, and then that complaint tends to move into asking God for what's needed, asking God to help in some way, maybe in a pretty desperate way, but there's an asking God. And then usually these psalms of lament, not every single one, but normally they end with some kind of expression of trust in God, some sort of declaration that even though these bad things are going on, and even though I'm desperately asking God to do something about it, I'm going to express that I do trust God, that even in all of this I trust him. And that generally we follow that pattern as we see the Psalms of Lament. And quite a simple one in terms of that pattern is Psalm 13. So I'm just going to read that out. I'm going to put it on the screen. and read it out to us. And at each of the points that we get to in Psalm 13, we'll see that these things happen. So first of all, we've got the turning to God. So the psalmist, David in this case, begins by saying, "O Lord." He turns to God, "O Lord." And then he expresses his complaint. "How long will you forget me? Forever? How long will you look the other way? How long must I struggle with anguish in my soul, with sorrow in my heart every day? How long will my enemy have the upper hand?" So you see, most of verses 1 and 2 there is that expression of complaint to God, calling out to God, and basically saying, "Why is this happening, Lord? Why are these terrible things happening? Why do I feel so terrible? Why are my enemies having this success?" He's complaining about the things that are going on. And then that complaint leads David into asking God for help. So verses 3 and 4, "Turn and answer me, O Lord my God. Restore the sparkle to my eyes, or I will die. Don't let my enemies gloat, saying, 'We have defeated him.' Don't let them rejoice at my downfall." So this is David saying, "This is what I desperately need you to do, Lord. Desperately need you to come and shine your light into my life. I desperately need you to defeat the enemies that are coming against me." So he's calling out to God for very specific help in this. And then the final couple of verses of the psalm are David turning to say, "I do trust you, God." He's expressing that trust in God. "I trust in your unfailing love. I will rejoice because you've rescued me. I will sing to the Lord because he is good to me." And so he's able to turn eventually. Who knows how long it took David to get to that place from saying, "Oh Lord, how long will you forget me?" to being able to say, "But I trust in your unfailing love." But he moves through that stage of lament and calling out to God with his requests into that statement of trust. And maybe sometimes we make that statement of trust when it's really hard to do that, where we don't really feel like it. But perhaps it's a good discipline for us to say, "Lord, I do trust you, even in the midst of all this." So that's what the pattern is. Maybe just as we have that in mind, I'll read through that psalm again, just slowly. Perhaps you want to close your eyes, and you can perhaps turn that psalm into a psalm that you pray for yourself and in perhaps your personal circumstances, or perhaps thinking about situations in the world at the moment. "O Lord, how long will you forget me? Forever? How long will you look the other way? How long must I struggle with anguish in my soul, with sorrow in my heart every day? How long will my enemy have the upper hand? Turn and answer me, O Lord my God. Restore the sparkle to my eyes, or I will die. Don't let my enemies gloat, saying, 'We have defeated him.' Don't let them rejoice at my downfall. But I trust in your unfailing love. I will rejoice because you have rescued me. I will sing to the Lord because he is good to me." And so there in Psalm 13 we have that example of a prayer of lament. And we could use that prayer to pray for ourselves. We could use that prayer to pray for Ukraine. We could use that prayer to pray for a friend in need. It's a pattern that we can use whenever we want to. And what I'd like to suggest that we do in the next few minutes, and I'll put that little pattern on the screen, going down through turning to God, complaining to God, asking God, trusting God, just to kind of keep it there so you have it. But I was going to suggest that we just pause for 15 minutes. you're in the comfort of your own homes, and either in your head, or maybe it will be easier to have a pen and paper and just to write a prayer of lament, just to follow that pattern for yourself, whatever it might be that comes to mind that you feel you need to call out to God about, to be honest with God about, to say, why is this happening? And then following through that pattern. And maybe it'll be a prayer that you come back to and that you feel you can use in your own life, on a regular basis, or maybe it'll be something that's just for now. Maybe it's something that when we come back together, you want to share with others, you want to read it out, or you want to express what was happening in those 15 minutes, or maybe you want to just keep it to yourself, and that's fine too. So I'll put the little slide on the screen with that on, and then I'll just turn off the video, not turn off the Zoom call, but just switch off the video bit, and then at well, we'll say 20 to 9, we'll come back, and if we want to share anything, we can share, and if we want to not say anything at all, I'll just do a little closing prayer and we'll finish. So now is your time to write your prayer of lament.